Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another Keto Dinner Ideas video. If you're new here, we make these videos every single week with 4 different easy keto recipes to give you a little motivation, inspiration to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep on. If you're not already, please hit that subscribe button and join the crew. Let's get into the video. First up, we made these awesome low-carb baked chicken tenders. The original recipes from the Chunky Chef, linked down below. I did go ahead and cut this in half. So in a mixing bowl, I am adding a half a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. To that, I'm adding a half a tablespoon oregano. They also added parsley. I opted to leave it out. Half a tablespoon paprika, a half a teaspoon garlic powder, a dash of cayenne pepper, a half a teaspoon salt, a fourth of a teaspoon ground black pepper, and then I'm whisking this all together until it's nicely combined and all of those lumps are out of that Parmesan cheese. Sticking that to the side, I'm grabbing 1 pound of chicken tenders. I went ahead and left the tendons in these. You can remove them if you like. Getting this stuff all laid out. Now I'm going to use this awesome baking pan and rack that my daddy bought and sent me. Love you, Daddy. If you guys don't have one of those, you can just use a nonstick foil lined pan. That will work fine. They just might not be as crunchy. I melted a fourth of a cup butter in the microwave, and then I'm just taking a chicken tender at a time and coating those really well in that melted butter, and then I'm just going to lay it in my Parmesan cheese spice mixture until it's nice and coated, and then stick that on top of my baking rack. And I'm just going to keep repeating this process for all of these. And I guess usually when I make chicken tenders like this, you would dip it in an egg mixture. I really liked the flavor of using the butter combined with the cheese. They were so good, and they were excellent leftover as well. Now after I get all of those done, this is what they look like. They fit perfectly on my pan. I went ahead and took another baking sheet lined with nonstick foil, washed and sliced a medium zucchini. You can see some pieces are thinner than others. Topped it with a little bit of Himalayan sea salt and ground black pepper. And then I'm going to take some actual shredded Parmesan cheese. And I didn't measure this. I just, eyeballed it and basically put a little pinch of Parmesan cheese onto the top of each piece of zucchini, and we are going to bake these right in the oven alongside our chicken tenders. Same temperature, same amount of time, 350 for 30 minutes. And here's what our chicken looks like when it comes out. It was nice and crispy and delicious. This was so good, and I liked it cold, leftover. I think I've already said that, but it was so good. And here's what our Parmesan cheese zucchini rounds looked like, and the thinner ones were nice and crisp, almost like chips. And this is it plated up. Excellent meal, highly recommend. And you could serve this with any type of low-carb, keto-friendly dipping sauce that you liked, but I ate mine just plain. Next up, we made a crock-pot meal of some braised cube steak with peppers and olives. I adjusted this recipe slightly, but again, the original is linked down below. So in a large crock-pot, I am adding 2 pounds of cube steak. I think I have about 6 slices here, but I didn't chop them ahead of time, so they're nice and big. I probably added about a fourth of a teaspoon sea salt to this, some ground black pepper, and then some garlic powder. I am going to go ahead and turn my steak pieces over. And I'm not worried about getting it too evenly seasoned because it's just going to cook down all day and everything's going to mix together anyway. But I did go ahead and turn them over and add a little bit more ground black pepper and a little bit more garlic powder as well. Now to this, I'm adding this was about a half of a small to medium onion. I'd say maybe a quarter of a cup of onion. And you can see I just sliced it and left it in rings. And then I also sliced up a small red bell pepper, and I'm adding that as well. To that, I'm adding a cup of no sugar added tomato sauce, and then I'm filling the same measuring cup up with a cup of water and adding that on top as well. I think you could really cut back on that if you don't want it to be so liquidy. Now I'm adding some green olives. These are just pitted green olives. I'm taking a third of a cup of those, adding them right on top, and then I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of the actual brine from the olives. And then we're just popping a lid on this, cooking it on low for 6 to 8 hours, or you could cook it on high for 4 to 5 hours. Here we are stirring it up, and you can see the steak's nice and tender. It breaks apart. Now at this point, you could take some of this liquid out, reduce it on the stovetop, add a little xanthan gum, and make a thick gravy. I didn't have time for that, and I opted not to do that. Instead, I just popped some cauliflower rice into the microwave, steamed it, added some butter, salt, and pepper, and then just plated a little bit of my steak, peppers, onions, and olives over the top of that, and I just ate it with the runny juice, and it tasted great. But I think it would be lovely to actually make a gravy out of all of that juice. Next up, I haven't made anything with a keto bread dough base in a while, so I made this version of ruled ME, link down below's Italian cheesy bread bake. I was skeptical of their dough recipe, but it turned out super awesome. So to start with, in a mixing bowl, I'm adding 4 tablespoons of coconut flour. And to that, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of flaxseed meal. And a teaspoon of just an Italian seasoning blend. And I'm whisking this all together until it's nice and combined, and sticking that to the side. Meanwhile, in a microwave-safe bowl, I'm adding 1.25 cups of shredded Monterey Jack cheese, and this is from a block of Monterey Jack cheese that we shredded ourselves so that we could cut back on carbs for this recipe. Popping this in the microwave 1 minute, and that actually did it and made it nice and melty enough to go ahead and make our dough. Now they recommend letting it cool and adding the egg. I always like to just go ahead and add the dry ingredients to the melty cheese and mix those in pretty well. So once I get most of those dry ingredients kind of mixed in with that cheese so it starts forming like a dough-like substance, then I go ahead and add in 1 large egg. And I'm also going to mix this together pretty well before getting in there with my hands. Now, I was really, like I said, skeptical of this dough recipe. I don't have any oil on my hands and there's no butter in this recipe, so I thought it would stick to me, but surprisingly it did not. And I really like the texture of this. It feels more like a heavier kind of rustic whole wheat bread or something would feel. So that was kind of a pleasant change. But if you're not feeling this dough, you could totally make this recipe with a fathead dough, and I prefer adding a little butter to my fathead dough. Just a little tip there. So after I get this kneaded in pretty well, I'm going to turn it out into a piece of parchment paper. And we're looking for kind of a rectangular shape here because we're going to fill it up with our fillings in the middle and then kind of braid the top. So I just like to go ahead and mash it out with my hands to get it kind of into the shape that we want to work with before putting another piece of parchment paper on top. And then I'm just going to use my rolling pin to kind of get that out to approximately the shape and size that I'm looking for. But you can see here when I pull this parchment paper off that I really don't pay a lot of attention to what that looks like because it's all going to come out beautiful in the end. So peeling that off, and then I just kind of straightened it. And I recorded a vlog for you guys last week using some of this salami on chaffle sandwiches, and I just haven't edited and put that up yet, but it's coming. But we're just going to use the leftovers of this capicola and is it sopressata? Again, someone give me the correct pronunciation of that, but I'm just going to add some of those on here. They're both carb-free, so I'm not really measuring too much, just putting the leftovers there. And you can use whatever kind of meat for this. You don't even have to use salami. Now, it called for provolone cheese, and I'm out, so I'm using this Italian. It is pre-shredded, so that does add a little bit of carbs. You can see the macros here. I'm just going to add probably about 1/4 cup of that to the top of my salami. And then I'm adding about a handful of fresh baby spinach to the top of that. Now we're going to add some banana peppers. I'm just using these mild jarred banana peppers, and I'm adding, I don't know, probably 1/8 cup, just a little bit on top. And I'm sprinkling the whole thing with a teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil. And then I'm just using a pizza cutter, and I'm going to make diagonal cuts down both sides of my dough because we are going to kind of make this like a braided loaf. I don't know what the proper terminology is for that, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of eyeball it, and it all comes together surprisingly. So once I have all of my slits cut, I went ahead and decided to fold in the ends first. And again, the dough felt a little, it feels drier. It's not as pliable as your regular fathead dough. So I'm kind of folding those in and pinching it together. And I decided to do both ends first and then braid in as we go. And I would normally heavily edit this or fast forward it, but I really want you guys to see how this turns out so that if you make this recipe, you're not like, oh crap, when it feels like your dough is breaking. So we're just pulling in one piece at a time from each side, and I'm kind of pinching and mashing in the middle, and it gives it the effect of looks kind of like a fishtail braid by the time you get done. And you can see a second ago, one of the pieces kind of broke a little bit, and you just pinch it back together. It's no worries. Like it all comes together in the oven. You just need it to hold together until it gets there. So I just continued doing that all the way down, and then I'm kind of taking my hands and pinching in those, big kind of gapping places at the end. And da-da-da-da-da. Look how beautiful it is. I'm sliding the whole thing onto a cookie sheet because I haven't done that yet. And then I'm taking an egg over in a separate dish and just beating that really well, and using a silicone basting brush to just I probably only used like a quarter of this egg to just brush it all the way across the top. And then I popped this into a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes. Here's what it looks like when it comes out. Look how beautiful that is. It always shocks me every time because it feels like, oh no, this isn't gonna work. Like this is falling apart, and it's always beautiful. Here it is sliced up. I cut mine into 4 slices. Each serving is like less than 3 net carbs, which is awesome. And you could serve this with a side salad or something if you wanted, but I prefer to just eat mine like that. Last up this week, we made this awesome taco keto chicken pasta. We used the Zero Carb shirataki noodles for this. So to start with, I took a pound of chicken tenderloins, and I am seasoning these on both sides with a little bit of taco seasoning. In this container, I have 3 tablespoons of taco seasoning, and I'm going to use about a tablespoon for this and save the other 2 tablespoons to add to our sauce. So not worried about cross-contamination there. You can use any low-carb taco seasoning you like. I always just kind of throw together seasonings and make my own. The recipe that is linked down below called for 14 ounces total of the Miracle Noodles. I opted to just use 1 pack, 7 ounces, because if you're not used to eating these, they can really do a number on you. So I always eat less than the serving size. Probably about half of what they recommend is the serving size. So I felt like 1 pack of noodles would be fine for us. So I already have those drained and rinsed. And over here in my pan, I'm adding a couple tablespoons of avocado oil over medium-high heat. And then I'm adding my tenderloins straight to the pan. And I'm going to sear these on each side for like 4 to 5 minutes until they're cooked through. Just flipping those over. We'll do the other side as well. And once those were cooked on the other side as well, I'm just jostling them around a little bit, and I wanted to make sure that they were all the way cooked through the middle. So I'm popping a lid on them, sliding them to another burner, and just leaving them on low to medium to make sure they're all the way fully cooked while we work on the sauce for our pasta. So in a large sauce pot over the medium-high heat, I'm adding a cup of heavy cream. To that, I'm adding the other 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning, and I'm whisking this together. Once it comes to a boil, I'm adding 1.5 cups of a Mexi blend shredded cheese, just cheddar and Monterey Jack mixed together. And I'm whisking that together until it's melted and thick. And this really only took a second. This cheese melted super quickly. To that, I'm adding a can of Rotel that I drained. And once I have that all mixed in, we're going to add our pasta. In hindsight, I would recommend cutting these Miracle Noodles up because they stick together horribly. You have to go through a lot of work to get your small serving size out and onto your plate, but I guess it's worth it to have a 0 to low carb pasta substitute option. And here's our chicken all the way done, and now we just need to plate it up. And here's a little example. I'm using I don't know what you call this either, a pasta picker upper, and you can see how it's kind of all sticking together. So it is a little frustrating, but trust me, it tastes great. And again, if you're new to eating this type of pasta, take it easy on it. And here it is plated up, just a little bit of pasta and sauce and our chicken on top. Super easy, stores and reheats great. And there you go. That's this week's Keto Dinner Ideas. What's for dinner on keto? If you like it, please give us a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe to our channel. Love to have you join the crew. And until next time, bye guys.